Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this workshop meeting of the Lower Paxton Township Board of Supervisors. We'll call the meeting to order, and I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Supervisor Chrisman if he would lead us in that.
Glad to. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I would like to announce that prior to this meeting, the Board of Supervisors met in executive session to receive information from the township manager and a number of other professionals. With that, we'll now proceed to public comment, and public comment is for any items that are not on the agenda tonight. Would any member of the public like to address the board on an item not on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing no public comment, we will then move to a presentation and discussion on a letter of representation in partnership with Amorex Energy Services. Where's Blaze? I don't see Blaze.
No.
All right, we might hold that till later in the agenda. Maybe he's running late. Okay, so we'll just delay that discussion for a little while and go to item number 5, which is presentation and review of the land development plan for construction of a pole building at the sewage operations facility. Mr. Weaver and Mr. Hines, good evening. Good to see you.
Good evening, board members, Mr. Chairman. The presentation this evening, I'm going to give a little bit of background about the project, and then Jason's going to go over the land development plan itself. As some of the board members may recall, at the authority meeting in May, staff presented the pole building project. We had a study done by the sewer system engineer, GHD, to evaluate if it was cheaper to add on to the existing building or build a pole building directly behind the existing operations facility. They also did a study about staffing for the next 30 years, which is difficult to do, but they did a very thorough analysis about staffing in terms of looking at other municipalities in the area, the stormwater program, the sanitary sewer consent decree, and we're prepared to do a land development plan based on that study. HRG was then tasked to prepare this plan to accommodate future growth of the department and also the direct needs for storage of the equipment, which is presented in our memo to the board and in the letter to the public. I'll be happy to answer any questions. If there's no questions for me, I'll turn it over to Jason. He can give a description of the land development plan and the construction specs for the pole building.
Jason, why don't you go ahead and give us the description so everybody knows what we're talking about before we go into questions.
Sure. So the proposed facility is approximately 3,200 square feet, about a 40-foot by 82-foot pole building structure, as Mr. Weaver had mentioned. The location for the facility will be directly to the south of the existing authority facility on the Public Works lot off of Porsche Drive. It's going to be placed on an existing parking / storage pad area to the rear of the existing facility. The building is not going to be climate controlled or used to store vehicles of any nature. It's just strictly going to be for equipment and, as Mr. Weaver mentioned, for future growth within the authority.
Okay. Board members, do we have any questions?
We had taken a tour of the current facilities a while back, not too long back, and talked about the space needs and how we could address that, and walked through the property and kind of looked at where it would be and what the impact would be on the surrounding area, and I think we got a good handle at the time on exactly what the scope of the project would be. So this is something that we knew was coming and running out of space, and it seems like the most logical thing to do.
The proposed building, is it visible from any surrounding properties? Because I
I
seem to
don't
recall that
believe-
there was a wooded area behind it.
Yeah, to the, would be to the east is Votech, to the south is vacant land. To the west is the residential Pine Hollow neighborhood. But if you can pull up, Brad, could you pull up the actual building spec itself there? Is that posted on there? Yeah, right there, yep. So that building, if you look at that spec, the sidewall is 16 feet, and then the truss of the roof is about an additional 7, 8 feet. So you're looking at about 23 to 24 feet high, and I believe the salt storage shed, which is actually to the west, is probably a little taller. So that building being stuck in the corner, I don't believe it'll be visible. We're not really increasing employees for the immediate future. There's a need in the 5-year stormwater plan to hire 2 stormwater employees for the MS4 program. So this building initially was designed for sanitary sewer. We made it a little bit bigger to accommodate Jeff Klein's need for potential for 2 pickup trucks in there as well. And there is money in the authority budget. With the additional size, we did go over budget. We had $260,000 in the sewer authority budget, and the estimate by HRG is $382,000. So that additional 25% that the stormwater fund is going to use will pick up. Actually, it really worked out that they could pick up that extra space, and we could stay in our budget, and then the stormwater could get their additional space, and that's really it. The only other thing I want to just remind, at least the supervisors, because I don't know if we presented this, we did present it to the authority, but there is an issue in the pad itself. There was fill put back in there when the original building was built. We had HRG do some compaction testing. Well, actually, it was Hills Carnes.
Hillis Carnes,
Yeah.
yes.
So Hills Carnes did some compaction testing, and the fill is not sufficient to use the footers for the building, so we have to take out, maybe you can better describe that, Jason.
Sure, so.
Yeah, Jason.
So when the fill was placed in this particular area, it wasn't sufficiently compacted. So the compaction tests show that that material needs to be over-excavated and structural fill placed before it's suitable to be used as a building pad. So that'll be essentially the first phase of the project, to prepare the pad itself for the building to be constructed.
And to save costs, we are going to attempt to do that with our own staff. We do have the equipment for that. We have the backhoes, we have the compaction equipment. It's actually going to be a combined project with Public Works. Jeff's going to give us some of his guys and some of our guys if we get successful bids. We're not going to move on that until all the plans are approved and we go out to bid and the board is happy with the bid results. So.
Question for Jason. Jason, what's our time frame in terms of what the amount of time that's going to be required to get that prepped before we even start the project?
So the idea tonight was to present the plan to you and to ask for approval to submit the land development for the August Planning Commission meeting. So assuming that we get our approvals in August, the idea would be to then immediately bid the project, and most likely have a construction phase ready project by late fall or so.
Okay. I was just concerned, based on your description earlier, whether in fact that had an impact on the actual construction, or were you including that in the entire project? You were including that. Okay. I didn't know if that was extra time that would shift or change or alter the time schedule at all. And the answer is no.
No.
Okay. That was my bottom line question. Thanks.
I think we had asked, as far as the impact on the community, noise, extra traffic, trucks, and you had said that was going to be minimal.
Well, for this pole building, basically we'll be storing vehicles and sewer construction equipment, materials, pipe, manholes, hoses, saws, that kind of thing, where our I&I crew, to become more efficient, we've sort of beefed up on additional equipment, pyrotechnology, skid loader, that kind of thing. It speeds up their production when they're replacing sewer. So we just basically, as the board may remember, seeing the facility. It just, everything's just stuffed in that garage. You can't even move. So really no activity in the actual building itself. It's just gonna be, at the end of the day, they'll be taking all their equipment in there, putting it in there, and then in the morning, they'll be pulling it out.
And most of those trucks are already on site.
The pickup trucks are brought back to the garage every day by the inspection staff, but the actual sewer replacement crew, they do stage at the actual location they're working at, and they do stage a lot of materials. So the pole building really is other materials and equipment, and then actual space for if they do have to come back and then, you know, put the equipment in there, because there is downtime. Not very often. We like to keep them working all the time. But, you know, when you have a downtime, you get 15 inches of snow, you're not going to be digging sewers for a couple days. Bring the equipment back, put it in the pole building, go back out. There's a lot of yard restoration equipment in there. We have a straw sprayer, that kind of stuff. So they don't keep that out at the job site.
So, I mean, just the extra vehicle traffic and
There'll
truck
be no
traffic.
increase in terms of anything like that. It's really just basically getting stuff out of the existing garage so there's room to move around in there. And then when the I&I crew, sewer replacement crew, brings their equipment back, they have somewhere to put it.
And I think you were, before we build, notice was going to go to the community.
We did send a letter, it's in the packet. It's not required by the ordinance, but after talking to the authority and Brad, was suggested that we should send a letter out just to notify the community what we're going to do. So we did send a letter out. I basically said you could call me or send me an email if you had any questions, and as of today, I didn't receive any emails or phone calls asking any questions. We sent out about 56 letters.
Good. Any other board questions? No. Any public questions or comments? Please come to the podium. And although we know it, give us your name and address for the record. We haven't forgotten you. We know you've been busy with shade trees, so that's.
Talk about that next week, I understand.
Yes.
Thank you, Brad. My name is Tim Murphy. I live at 1524 Pine Hollow Road. And yes, I did receive a letter from Mr. Weaver. There was no packet involved. It was just a letter. But going on to the township website and clicking the link, I was able to bring up the 6-page drawing that is being presented tonight. First off, I want to say thank you. I applaud you for doing this. This is what should have happened back in the day of the MDJ building and the Public Works building expansion. So thank you very much for correcting past errors. I appreciate that. In terms of building location, I just want to be sure I understand. It is going to be on the far east edge of the township's property. Am I right about that?
You should have that.
The letter indicated it was going to be directly behind the
Right.
existing
Yeah, it would be the
sewer
south.
department
It would be
building.
directly.
And I'm not familiar with where that is.
Okay, so the sewer
Tim, can you see
Can
where
you see the diagram, Tim?
the drawing that he has on the screen?
So if you come down Porsche Lane, to the right is the DJ's office and the baseball field. If you just continue down Porsche Lane, on the left, you're gonna run right into our sewer operations facility, and on the right is the Public Works building. They named the whole center, I believe it's the Jack Hurley Center, is that correct? And then we actually named our building sewer operation facility, so people knew where to go, because sometimes they get confused, and so we actually named ours the sewer operation facility. So yes, the pole building will go just directly behind south of the existing building, and the salt shed I was referring to was just to the left behind the Public Works building. So that's why I was saying, I don't believe anyone from your neighborhood actually will be able to see it after it's constructed, because it'll be blocked by the Public Works building and the salt storage shed.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yep.
And I assume that there were setbacks shown on the plan view. I assume you're going to adhere to those setback distances?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not going to see massive destruction of trees along the property line as we had seen in the past. That's great. I didn't see anything in the drawings regarding the detention basin. There was mention in the letter about modifications to the stormwater conveyance, but I didn't see anything indicating any changes or increases in the storage in the existing detention basin. Can you give me a little bit explanation on that?
Sure. So the existing detention basin is directly to the south, which would be the bottom of the sheet there that we're looking at right now. Right now, that whole area just drains off to that basin. We're not going to change any of those drainage patterns. We're going to tie the roof leaders from the structure directly into that basin. So there won't be any additional stormwater runoff generated from the site than there presently is today.
So you're going to put a building under roof and you're going to pave an area, but there's going to be no increase in runoff. Can you explain how that is?
Yes, because the building's going to be located on an area that is already currently in an impervious state. So it's, right now, as it exists today, that area is impervious cover. Once the
paved?
building's constructed.
I can.
Is
Let me
it
describe
a
that a little bit
paved
because
area?
it's our operation. Yes, so directly behind the current building is where the employees park. They park in the back there and they park in the front with Public Works. And then directly behind that, as part of the original building when it was built, there was a landscape buffer that was required. So we had to plant some trees. So there's parking, there's trees. I apologize for not having a photo. I didn't think of that. But right behind the trees, there's the impervious surface, which is a shed, manholes, that kind of thing that we're already storing materials outside and in the shed. So as Jason said, it's all impervious right now except for just a couple of trees that are right along the parking lot. So that's it. Now those trees will have to come down, but that, I believe that amount of impervious surface didn't change in the stormwater ordinance that required any stormwater planning.
So there's basically no change in the runoff curve number from
No,
pre-existing to post-project?
no.
Okay, and the existing detention, by all appearances, is more than adequate?
Correct, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Couple of other questions. I noticed that this plan was put together by HRG, and I can never keep straight in my head. HRG is the engineer for the township or for the sewer authority?
So they are now the engineer for the township and the authority because the authority took over the stormwater system. So they actually act as the engineer for the stormwater management program for the authority. And then it gets more confusing because the township actually runs the authority. But the authority has to own the system, and they develop the capital program and policy. Everything else is done by the supervisors. But so the HRG actually serves as the engineer for the authority and the township in both stormwater capacities for both.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up. I know in the past, the authority had a different engineer.
Right, we still do have GHD as the sewer engineer, but HRG is the stormwater engineer.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and one last question for you, just so I can understand this. I heard you made some mention about how this is going to move forward and how it's being paid for. Can you explain that again? I guess my concern is some of the funding for this coming from the new stormwater fee that's going to show up in our sewer bills this month?
That's correct. There's no money in the 2019 stormwater fund to participate with this project because we didn't anticipate that Public Works, with their operation of the stormwater system, would need any space because they just built their facility. But with the MS4 program, was not done when the facility was built. Now with the MS4 program, as the public's aware, it's going to create a big effort for staffing down the road. And there's an immediate need for 2 employees in the next 5 years. So that percentage, we did a rough calculation that will be really more efficient number when we do the draft budget to the supervisors and the authority in August. But I just estimated around 25% because they're going to have 2 vehicles with 3,200 square feet. It's basically 25% of 380,000. And then we convert that into our square footage, and then they'll basically get that space. So there's no commingling of funds. We made that very clear that The stormwater fund is separate from the sanitary sewer fund, and all the operations are kept separate. But we are, the efficiency of the township is that there's many employees in this building that work on sanitary sewer, stormwater, and township activities. So that's all, our finance department, it's amazing what they do because they have to track all this stuff. And that's all being done. So 25% to answer your question of 382, I don't have a calculator here, but that's what that number would be.
Will be from.
For the stormwater fund, yes.
Stormwater fund. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And again, thank you very much for giving us a heads up on this in advance. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And thank you for being here with your questions. We appreciate it. Would anybody else like to? Yes, please come to the podium and again, give us your name and address.
Hi, my name is Janice Makett. I live at 1509 Pine Hollow Road. I just have a few questions to follow up with. The township private sewer replacement crew, who is that? Are they employees or subcontractors?
They are employees of the sewer department. There's a 4-man crew.
Okay, so they're
Yeah.
employed by the township.
Correct.
Okay, so this stuff that you're storing then for this is based, they're employees, these employees with the type of equipment and product that they need will be storing that stuff back there rather than being on the site. Is that my understanding? What I'm trying to get to is that if it was a subcontractor and we are storing stuff for them, how
No.
long does this project go on? If it's 4 years, then why are we still storing storing stuff after 4 years? But this is
Right.
ongoing for how long?
The sewer project probably could be indefinite. I hate to say that because the actual consent decree is 2027 for Paxton Creek and 2033 for Beaver Creek. We hope that will be done for quite some time after that, but our engineer tells us that you don't want your system to continue to deteriorate. We're only replacing 60% of the system, so you have to just keep doing a little. So we will be scaling down. So those 4 employees will be continuing to replacing building sewers up through 2033. And then we'll have to check after that. But I imagine they'll be working for quite some time. But the idea was that when the consent decree was over, we'd scale down some employees, but with growth, we'd need more. So there's a balance. We actually don't think we'll have to increase any employees in the sewer department, but for Jeff and stormwater, right now, there's a need for 2. But to answer your direct question, there's 4 people that are in the sewer department. We're all township employees, but paid by the authority.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other question was, it's my understanding that based on the new build of the maintenance building, that snow plows and so forth were going to be housed in there. Now we're talking a storage facility for sewer plus snow plows and stuff like that. So are we gaining more snow plows, or are we just shifting materials around now that we have a new building?
So we've gained snow plows. So when I started here 23 years ago, we had 5 to 7 pickup trucks with 5 to 7 snow plows. And with this consent decree and all the employees, we had to hire 5 inspectors. We were paying HRG and GHD more money, so it was cheaper for the authority to bring our own inspectors in-house. We saved 25 to 30% a year. But you have to buy a pickup truck. So when we bought a pickup truck, we were directed by the township manager to buy a plow with it, which the township paid for, and the township pays for our employees to assist Public Works in plowing. So that really is not talked about a whole lot, but that's a huge benefit to the township, is that we have 17 pickup trucks with snow plows that the sewer department employees assist Public Works doing a snow event. So that works out great for both, so.
So how many trucks that you have? You're saying 17 right now?
Yes, we have
Okay.
17 trucks right now.
Throughout the whole township itself?
That's for sewer department. Public Works has, I think, 30.
So where are they stored now then? Where are all these
The
trucks?
sewer department trucks are stored in the sewer operations facility. Public Works has their truck in their facility. So what we're talking about is the actual construction equipment. That is going to go in the pole building, and also some additional pickup trucks in the next 5 years if Jeff decides to hire people down the road to help with the MS4 program, which is maintenance of the stormwater system.
Okay,
So-
and the pad itself is concrete? or the pool building?
It
Pool
will,
building.
it will be concrete, correct? Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it'll be built on a concrete slab.
Okay, and you said that there was not going to be any type of, in the letter itself, it says that there was going to be hookup of electric and, what was the other thing? Electrical and heating service, yet you said it was just going to be a regular building. Is that for lighting purposes?
Yes,
For the-
there'll be,
for the
there'll be,
electric?
there'll be lighting, there will need to be electricity for the bay doors to open and close those. There'll be receptacles around the inside in case anybody needs to plug something in. There will be water service to a hose spigot on the outside of the building, nothing on the inside. There will be some space heaters located on the inside. Not that will control the whole building, just enough to keep it warm for employees that may need to be in there doing things in the wintertime. But it's basically a bare bones metal skeleton structure that's just going to be used, like Mr. Weaver said, to house equipment, snow plows, things of that nature.
So there's no future of ever having offices in there, then?
No.
Just a barn?
Yeah, we have a shop in the existing facility where they do welding, and we stored like 90 flow meters and all kinds of things are going on in that shop. In the existing facility, the pole building, there's gonna be no actual maintenance activity on trucks or equipment or anything. It's just gonna be throwing stuff in there, storing it. When they need it, they pull it out.
Will you be able to lift stuff up into, in other words, it's pretty tall building, and you're just talking, are you doing any?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't gotten that far with the engineer, but one of the reasons we need the space is for plows and to put them on. So I believe there's gonna have to be some hookup to get the plow onto the pickup, right?
Yeah, right now there's no built-in shelving or
Are you considering a
built-in.
lift of some sort to go in there? Because then that needs a different concrete pad for something like that,
yeah,
based on weight bearing.
yeah, nothing that's attached to the building.
No, it wouldn't have to be attached to the building, it would be attached to the concrete. But if you're going to lift something that's extremely heavy up in, are you gonna have,
I can answer. I think we're talking about getting a forklift, basically, I believe, but I have to check with my staff. Not sure how they plan on,
so you're gonna utilize taller areas rather than just having a building with everything on the ground and then you have all this open space? You see what I mean?
It'll basically be plows and equipment. So I apologize because I didn't talk to my staff about where they plan on getting the plows onto the truck. There's going to be plows stored in there. I'm guessing they're just going to pick them up with a forklift or a backhoe and bring them into the other garage where we have a mechanism to do that, but I didn't get that far.
Add that to your list.
Yeah, right.
Okay. I think that's all for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come to the podium, and as usual, your name and address, please.
Hello, my name's Karen Hare. I live at 5902 Pine Hollow Court. I also want to thank you for the letter of notification ahead of time. I really appreciate that, so that we have a heads up on what's going to take place. During your conversation, the only thing I picked up on, you had said because of the landfill and all the stuff that was back there, that you were going to have to do compacting of the land. And my concern is, are you going to have like a monitor to monitor the impact that's going to have in the surrounding area? Because we had an issue when they did the MDJ and the all the addition there, when they were compacting the land for the ball field, several houses, I mean, our houses shook and windows shook, and some houses had some damage done to them. One of the neighbors had a hardwood floor that cracked, some had nail pops popping, some had windows that were messed up that they had to replace. So my concern is, depending on how that goes and travels, do we, the neighboring houses, have to worry about any impact from the compacting of that land?
So the difference in what we're doing is it does have to be, as Jason said, structural fill, but basically what that means is we have to put stone in lifts. And Jason, the engineer, can tell this better. I just know from sewer trench experience that basically two foot lifts and then you're compacting it, you're rolling it. So you're not going to be like pounding this stuff.
No, they
You're
had
gonna be-
rollers.
Yes.
Their equipment were
Yes.
rollers, but that's
Yep.
what did the damage.
Yeah,
It
we're,
was
we're not
rollers.
talking about that kind of vibration. 2-foot lifts, and then they're going to roll it, put 2 more feet down, roll it, probably with a sheep foot roller, I imagine.
Yeah, this equipment will need to be much smaller than the equipment that was used for the Public Works facility, just because of the area that it's going to be located on.
Okay.
Um,
I just wanted, I was concerned because I wasn't sure what exactly you were talking about, and I didn't want a
Sure.
repeat of that we'd have to work, that something's going to happen, and should it be monitored to make sure nothing's happening. So I just wanted to make that comment to make sure that
Right.
that's not going to occur again.
Now, and we'll be mindful of that, so I'm glad you asked.
Okay.
The only disturbance you'll see initially is, I didn't mention this before, is the dirt going out, because it's going to be a 40 by 80 section. Is it 40 by 80? 40 by 80. So that's going to take, 50 triaxle loads to get that material out of there. And then they have to have trucks come in and dump the stone, and then they basically, like I said, put it in 2-foot lifts, roll it, and then we'll have somebody there testing it with a nuclear density gauge just to make sure that they're getting correct compaction.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tim, you have a follow-up question.
Yeah, based on Mr. Weaver's last comment, I do have a question. Did you say 50 triaxles of material are going to be hauled out of there?
Again, I apologize. I didn't do the exact math, but it's a pretty simple calculation because it's just square feet converted into cubic yards. So basically, a triaxle can hold 20 cubic yards, and I think our initial conversation was there was probably about 1,000 to 2,000 cubic yards. It actually could be more closer to 100 trucks. I think it's more like 2,000 cubic yards. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know the exact volume off the top of my head, but
Well, I can get an answer
Okay,
for you on
it's
that.
going to be a sizable
It is
volume of material.
40 by 80.
Here's my big, but the real question is, where is that material going? Is it going into the field where there's always a pile growing and shrinking? Public
No.
Works has got a pile going there behind our properties, and there's backup alarms from front-end loaders at 6:30 in the morning, and I'm just wondering if we're going to have several months of that going on.
No, so we have the Wolfersburger Park site where there's been fill placed there from our sewer projects, and we have HRG assisting us with doing topo shots for if there's a park built in the future. Answer your question, it's going to be placed up there, engineeredly placed, not compacted, but directed by HRG where to put it. But we'll be dumping up at that park for another 2 years with our sewer contractor as well. So yes, it'll go up to Wolfersburger Park.
Okay, so you don't have anything to do with the pile that grows and shrinks
No,
in the
that's
field
not-
behind our property?
No.
Okay, I'll take that to Jeff Klein.
All right, there you go. Thank you.
That'll teach Jeff not to be here, right? The other Jeff Klein, yeah. Would anybody else like to address the board on this subject? Okay, so you'll be taking this then to the Planning Commission at their next meeting? And, correct?
yes, their August meeting.
Okay, great. Well, there you go, Planning Commissioners. You know what's coming next for you. So, okay, well, any other questions come up to the board members in the process of the public comment? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your update. Appreciate it. And I do see that Mr. Pepitone is here, so we will go back to item number 4. And Blaze, if you would come to the podium, give us your name, address, and who you're with, and we're going to discuss a partnership with Amerex Energy Services.
Good evening. I underestimated the infamous Route 83. My apologies. My name is Blaze Pepitone. I'm a vice president at Amerex Energy Services, and my address is unfortunately on the West Shore in Mechanicsburg, 209 East Winding Hill Road, Mechanicsburg.
Well, we'll forgive you for that.
Yes, thank you. So basically, after numerous discussions with Brad Lohman and myself, I'd like to shortly and compactly describe what I'd like to partner with the township on. So we'd like to bring a competitive advantage to energy supply and look at commodity pricing from both commodities in regards to electricity and natural gas. We'd like to have an opportunity to negotiate those contracts on your behalf, as well as building a proprietary pricing model to lower any type of energy pricing in regards to spend and also perhaps consumption. So that is a very brief. Loman told me to be very brief. So that's a very general overview. It gets quite complex as we can go into the strategy, but primarily there's really no there's an opportunity to bring competition to Lower Paxton's energy supply with creating an RFP with competitive bids appropriate.
So basically, you would take a look at our energy needs, our energy consumption.
Correct.
And on our behalf, go out and do an RFP and negotiate on our behalf to get us better rates.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's correct. We would also look at that is the primary objective. That's my specialty.
Mm-hmm.
But anything touching energy, we would want to obviously have an opportunity to assist or advise in one way or another. So I can speak to any particular need.
And your fee for this service?
So the fee would be embedded into the price. There's no upfront fee to you, and it would be fully transparent to the township as well, in writing.
Board members?
Have you represented any other municipalities?
I'm very glad you asked that. So yes, I do. I have a number of references that I can provide the township as well, including the city of Towanda, South Middleton, and some other, mostly in Pennsylvania. But I'm very versed in how municipalities, townships, and school districts buy electricity and natural gas. So.
Would you be so kind as to provide that list to Brad so that Brad could do a couple
Absolutely. Be happy
reference
to.
checks, please?
Yes.
And in your involvement with the other municipalities and/or school districts, on the average, what is your savings projected that we would be able to recognize? I mean, just to buy in and,
Sure.
and employ your services, I'd like to know what I'm getting.
Sure. So it is a truly market-driven opportunity. So I would have to take a look at where you're positioned. So it's unique to every situation. But I could say electricity is the only commodity in the world that's been remained flat for 15 years. There's tremendous amount of opportunity and savings, and we're able to save with a competitively priced municipality roughly about 8%, and they were competitively priced. So, and this was a future contract for a start in December. So you can be anywhere from 5 to 15% depending on where you're positioned. I can't sit here and honestly and transparently tell you that I can give you an actual number, but I can tell you that the markets are very low, very flat, and it'd be a great opportunity to look at. So.
Okay, as final follow-up, what's the closest school district or municipality that you're working with currently to us?
South Middleton.
South Middleton?
Yeah.
School district or?
School district, that's right, yeah. There's actually Lower Allen.
Lower Allen Township, right.
Lower Allen
Okay.
Township is closer. But.
Basically, what we would do is authorize the township through the township manager to enter into agreement with you. And you would just go out and look at the landscape, see what's out there, see what kind of savings you could get us. You would not execute any agreements on our behalf. And then what?
So my sole purpose would be is more of a pricing opportunity. So we would look at I deal with infrastructure, but that's in a different scope of what I'm describing now. So to your point, we would literally do an RFP. Brad and I would work on a appropriate pricing model, depending on if there's any upgrades in the future, because that affects pricing as well. So we would build that, do an RFP. We would gather the pricing. I would present it to you and Brad as well to then see, which term of contract you'd like to do, whether it's a 12, 24, 36, depending on, your appetite for a particular term. And then I would then negotiate the business terms of that contract as well, based on there's a long list of business terms that we would discuss, Brad and I, based on the township's needs. And then once those are appropriated in a contract, then we will present it to you for signature.
So is there any financial commitment up front on our part?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Blaze, just from a perspective of understanding your operation,
Yeah.
do you attack one field at a time, or are you attacking multiple, i.e. gas, electric, do you attack all of them, or do you say, based on what we know about Lower Paxton, we want to prioritize these energy issues, and we're going to attack this one first, this one second, because they've been prioritized? And then, after you tell me that, then what is your normal reporting back period of time?
Sure.
Just an organization's.
Sure, no problem, Gary. So, based on the information that Brad and I've discussed prior, there is an immediate need to look at a gas procurement contract.
Okay.
So that would be number one item. For me, it's really just think of it as the stock market. When prices are low and it's a good opportunity to buy, that's when we would want to engage in either commodity, depending on what market stipulations are at that point. So to your question, we would attack at this point, and where I see the market now, we would attack both commodities with electric and gas, knowing that your electricity contract is a future start date. Future starts have been really promising and yielding a nice return in savings, even though that you're still in a contract. We would start it at the end date, if that makes sense. The reporting back, it would, we're really at the mercy of suppliers retrieving utility data from an RFP. So that could take, a week and a half, but I should, upon engagement, I should be able to provide pricing within a few weeks. And then, based on discussions, we can execute something within a month, give or take. So,
Thank you.
and there would also be ongoing reporting as well.
I would hope.
Of course, yeah. I see you enough.
Mr. Zumas, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think they've all been answered.
That sounds like more work for our township manager, who's underworked, of course. Yeah.
I try to leave some of that.
Or not, as the case may be. We've added several items to his agenda tonight already.
Yes.
Okay. Since there are any public questions or comments? Okay. Personally, I think that any opportunity we have to do an RFP and shop around and see if we can get better rates, maybe we'll come up with some savings.
Sure.
Okay, this was listed on the agenda for presentation and discussion, so we'll place it on the agenda for our action next week.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
One last question.
Yes,
Does
sir.
this include communication services?
No, does not. I would never want to touch that. Personal opinion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Blaze. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Did you have a? I do have a question. We do have a question. You almost made it. Please come up so that so the folks at home, we want them to know we're not in summer reruns here, that this is actually a live.
All right, quick question. Sure. Is this for the township, just you guys,
Yes.
buildings, and it's not for the township residents?
Correct.
Okay, just clarification, just to make sure that we're not going to get some kind of solicitation.
It's only the township's concern.
All right, good to know.
Good question.
Be a communist.
That's a very good question. Yeah, this is our effort to hopefully take advantage of the energy markets and reduce our costs, which of course is your cost and our cost, because we pay the taxes too, and a lot of them. So, anybody else? Okay.
Thank you.
Now, Blaze, thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, guys. Have a great evening.
You too, sir. Okay, we will go now to item 6. We need to take action on Resolution 2019-20. This is authorizing submission of an application for traffic signal approval to PennDOT for the intersection of Mountain Road and Old Jonestown Road. Mr. Hines, what are we doing at Mountain and Old Jonestown Road? This is coming as a result of a very good set of circumstances where D&H, I believe.
Correct.
That's the intersection we're talking about?
Yes.
What are we doing?
So, we have performed an analysis of that intersection as requested by township staff and found that the signal as well as the line striping at some of the legs of the intersection are in need of upgrade before D&H comes in and occupies the building.
Right.
So this resolution authorizes submission of this TE 160 document to PennDOT, which is needed for them to issue a signal permit so that those improvements can actually be implemented.
So a study was conducted,
Correct.
and as a result of that study, these changes will be made. For those not familiar, DNH is going to be adding, what, 600?
750.
750 employees into that building,
The old AMP property,
the old AMP property.
Tyco.
Tyco, where previously there had been a large contingent of employees, but DNH was concerned about the traffic flow in and out of their property with that many new trips being added. And this is, the study is to make that all flow more smoothly. Won't be impacting the church on the other side of the road at all, right?
No.
Okay. I'd hate for Mr. Judd to have to answer to the church about that.
I think that's our church.
That's our church, that's fine.
I think, and we don't know, and the reason why we're happy you're on top of this and why we started talking about this as soon as we heard that DNH was coming in was the first thing you do once you're done celebrating the jobs and filling a largely vacant property with a tax-producing entity is the impact on the traffic. And for folks who live around there, I'm really interested. I've always wanted these tweaks on that intersection anyway. So I think the improvements just on their face, I'm excited to see. Now, we won't know the volume and the impact that will be until they're up and running. But I know there's a lot of residents in that general area that will appreciate some of these changes that are now, justified by what we anticipate.
Given the fact this application is now going to PennDOT, are we reasonably confident these changes will be made before they start moving in mid-September? What, mid to late September? Not sure.
Yeah, I think that's yet to be determined. I know that there's still some logistics to be worked out between the township and DNH financially and operationally for these improvements. So right now, we're just getting the approvals that are needed from PennDOT and then hopefully working those things out concurrently.
Very good.
We need to get this done so we can continue to move forward as quickly as possible.
Yes.
I think the stroke of midnight on the 1st of September, you're not going to see 750
Right.
people. I think they're transitioning over 3 months.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that'll give us a little bit of breathing room.
They're currently located in Harrisburg, for folks who may not know. They're on, I guess, the 7th Street in Harrisburg. So they're nearby, but I imagine that will be a phase-in.
Mr. Chairman, we can pontificate on the merits.
However,
I'll move to
but-
approve Resolution 2019-20, which authorizes submission of the application for the traffic signal to PennDOT for the intersection of Mountain Road and Old Jonestown Road as presented by Jason.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any public question or comment before we take a vote? Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my question is in terms of the time frame. I think I heard mention of this possibly being done before September, and I wonder where this sits in the queue with other things like the light at Locust Lane and Fairmont Drive, which has been in the queue for several months, and we haven't heard anything on the progress of that.
One's
traffic light
existing,
installation.
Yeah.
and one's new.
Yeah.
This is a restriping of lines and changing in timing. It's not building a whole new intersection. It's relatively simple to do. Nothing's really simple, but
Well, I understand that.
it doesn't have any impact on the Fairmont Locust Lane project. It doesn't speed it up or slow it down.
But it jumps ahead in the queue.
There's no queue.
Well,
We got a
it's
lot of intersections. We don't put them in a
If
list.
it gets done- if it gets done first, then it's jumping ahead in the queue in my mind.
No.
And just as a point of reference, I will mention, since September came up, in September, or actually in late August, there are going to be several hundred young drivers arriving again at the VOTEC school adjacent to that intersection I'm talking about. We all know it's a hazard. Something
Agreed.
needs to be done, and the timeliness is important. Thank you.
But I don't want anybody to be misled to think that this will in any way impact that. It honestly will not, and I don't want anybody watching to think that it will. And it really is a matter of changing the lines, putting up some signs, tinkering with the timing. They do not impact each other.
Yeah, we also have traffic signal changes and additions being made on Linglestown Road out near the Blue Ridge development. So there are multiple. We have the soon-to-begin project on Nye Road as well. So there are multiple things, but they all move. They're all unique and they all move in their own time, and each does not impact the other. It's not like PennDOT can only, I hope, can only do one thing at a time. There are multiple things. Brad, however, Mr. Murphy brings up a good point. Perhaps at our next meeting, if you could just check on the status of where things are at Fairmont and Locust, it would be a good idea to bring people up to. I'd like to know when that's going to happen.
Absolutely.
That's a dangerous intersection.
Will do.
Yes, Jen.
All right, I have a question. You're talking 750 new jobs coming in
Yes.
that area. Okay. Are they putting a turning lane in? Is there any talk about a turning lane coming eastbound to go into D&H Distributor? Because right now you have a turning lane and
Yes.
you have a single lane. Now, how backed up is that going to be come school time when the buses are coming up to Paxtonia Elementary School and people come into work? If there isn't a turning lane there where you're coming eastbound to Paxtonia Elementary School, you have a turning lane left, you have one lane. That one lane is only going straight, and until you go through that intersection are you going to be able to turn right. So how far back do you think that's going to go with 750 new people coming in?
Well, okay, Mr. Hines, do you want to explain what we're doing?
Yes, actually in the eastbound lane, there will be a shared left-hand turn, straight through lane, and then a dedicated right-hand turn lane. Currently, there's a dedicated left-hand turn lane and a shared straight right-hand turn lane. So this will make the intersection operate much more efficiently. The other improvement is in the southbound lane. So that's coming across like you're traveling from the Carnes complex. There will be a shared dedicated right turn and straight lane and a dedicated left turn lane. So right now that section of the intersection has a dedicated right and a shared straight and left. So those are the two things that are going to be implemented to make the intersection work more efficiently.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this right, going in, there's a four-way intersection there. Will each area that's coming out of those four areas have a turning lane going left and right and one going straight? Is that a yes or no?
Not all four.
I'm gonna say no.
Yes.
So
Yes.
going from east to west, that means coming away from Paxtonia Elementary School, heading towards D&H.
Correct.
You're now putting in another lane.
There's not going to be another lane.
No.
So you'll share going straight or going right if you're going to head towards Carnes.
No, you'll share going straight or going left into D&H.
You currently share going straight or going right. You will, and this is what people, I think, are going to benefit from. You now, that is a dedicated right turning lane to get out onto Mountain Road and get out of that area. And then it'll be straight or left to accommodate the other traffic going straight towards the post office or turning into. And then I think coming out of AMP, D&H, where, if I understand it, they're shrinking the island a little bit and creating room for a dedicated left lane or left and straight.
There'll be a dedicated right, and then there will be a shared straight and left.
Okay. So, yeah, there's no room. We're not adding any lanes. I don't think there's any room for that. But you're just trying to utilize the lanes that are there.
So here's what's going to happen, all right? If you're coming from Paxtonia Elementary School and you're coming towards that intersection, and now you have people who are going to go straight and who are going to go left into D&H, straight going through towards post office. At that particular point, the road isn't wide enough going back to take that kind of traffic. It's not wide
what do you mean
enough
that kind
to
of-
bring it back far enough that you have, is it?
No, one of the things you have to consider is where the traffic flow into D&H is coming from and going to. And the overwhelming preponderance of it is not going to be on Old Jonestown Road. It is going to be on South Mountain Road because it'll be headed toward 22 and the interstate. So the volume of traffic increasing, moving from east to west on Old Jonestown Road will be minimal. And it's already a problem because if you're on Old Jonestown Road and you're heading west and you want to go straight, but somebody, or you want to make a right turn, but somebody's going straight, they're going to stop at the traffic light when it's red.
That backs up
because they can't go straight. If you're right behind them and you want to make a right turn, all the right turn people are backing up because, so there's far more people who want to do that than who are going to be wanting to turn left into
Just
this
so that's
property.
on the record that you said that.
Well, it
because
can be
I
on the
know-
record.
Okay, because the
That-
width
that's-
of that area, you can probably only get 4 or 5 cars.
I'm aware of it.
go
I use
straight
it
or left.
several times every day because I live in that neighborhood. And, you know, the situation is that this is going to make it, according to the traffic study, this takes into consideration where the traffic is coming from and where the traffic is going to. And as Mr. Judd pointed out, it should actually correct what is currently not a good situation.
Okay, so here's another question. Back on Fairmont, where they're building all those houses,
Mm-hmm.
all right? Where do you think, once there's 500 buildings, townhomes, and all that's done, which area do you think they're going to go? Down Nye Road? Where do you think that impact's going to be? Coming down Nye Road where there's only one light there, and then there's supposed to be another one. You get to the end there, people are going to take that route to go get on the highway.
Well, actually,
saying.
coming out of that development, I think there will be traffic impact on Union Deposit Road. There'll be traffic
Absolutely.
impact on Locust Lane.
Absolutely.
Traffic impact on Nyes.
Because the township has had the history of not having growth to the roads, but having growth to the area. And then we get jammed up, and there's nowhere for anybody to go. That's why we have the opportunity. We're not landlocked at D&H right now because of making that from the post office heading east to make a turning lane there. Because you can only get a turning lane left to go onto Mountain Road and go straight. There isn't enough room to go around a car to go in to turn into there. It's going to be backed up clear to the post office for incoming traffic. Even down by Carnes, I'm telling you.
Well, listen, it's, I live around there.
Just keep it in mind when you're not.
Well, you don't know, but I'll say, definitely when school's laying out, there's daycares there, and it's obviously going to get crowded.
But keep in mind, these things are happening at different times of the day.
Yeah. Well,
Well, that's out at what?
Yeah, but the school buses are going in.
yeah.
They're going in. Well, the fact of the matter is, you know, this particular property had that number of employees there before, when AMP was there. Those buildings were full.
But they didn't have tractor trailers there.
Well, there aren't going to be tractor trailers.
No.
The tractor trailers are there at the moment because it's being
No,
renovated.
no. Have you been down at D&H? Do you know what they do?
Yes, we've been
They
down there.
ship.
We toured it. We toured it. This is not a warehouse.
I get
This is an
that, but they
office
still
facility.
ship from there.
There will not be trucks. There will not be. It's,
Right.
this is one of the first things we ask.
No,
Trust me, I live in that area. That's not, that would be a different situation.
There's no warehousing space on that property.
No, it's not.
So-
It will not be truck. That would be a different situation. That would be a different
It's
situation.
administrative headquarters.
Administrative, yeah.
Yeah, we did. We went down, we toured the facility. And look,
On a very
we
snowy day.
we will not know for sure what everything is going to, how everything's going to play out until it plays out. And then we'll react to that. If there's more tweaks we got to make, then we got to make them. But this is, as Mr. Henry said, I mean, that place was full before. We managed to do it before. We can do it again. We don't know, it may take some more revisions. But now we're doing everything that the engineers say to do, and we'll keep making more changes if we have to. It's
Yeah, but
overall going to be a good thing for the township. I drive by there all the time. I really don't feel like sitting in traffic. You know, that's a quality of life thing. It's a very important thing for this board. Is the people who pay township taxes don't expect a heck of a lot. They don't want to sit in traffic all day. They want the trash picked up, sewer to be taken care of, and police coverage. Some of the things that make up your quality of life. And I know that's really all you're talking about.
Well, it is, because Locust Lane has become light to light now.
Yes.
You can leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon from somewhere down Locust Lane to the far end towards Walnut Street, and you can be backed up to the light that's at the junior high, the middle school, all the way back up to the pizza place and past the cemetery.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a constant process, and we're a big township, and anything that we can do to make it better, I'd be in favor of.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, members of the board, just to provide some clarity to the issue as well. Actually, during the process of putting together the plan, HRG had interfaced with D&H to actually do a survey of all of the D&H employees, and they actually questioned each one of the employees to find out where they'll be coming from geographically, what route they'd be taking. So they do have a very detailed schedule of exactly where their traffic will be coming from and at what times. And then from that, they kind of juxtaposed that information on top of the current traffic in that area to get a sense of what the intersection will look like, when D&H is in full swing. So I believe that, HRG has done a pretty good job at providing a snapshot of what the intersection will look like with all those factors kind of wrapped into one. So.
Is that out, would that be on the website that we could check that out?
That would be their private information.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, where their employees are coming to and from is a private company. They're not going to give that information.
Not looking from where they're coming from, but you can have an overall thing that, 20, I don't know.
No,
150 are coming from Mountain Road straight in.
Well,
How many are coming from the highway? I mean, that's not asking personal information. That's basically getting a rounding of where your traffic's coming from.
We had, that information was provided to our engineers, and we did the traffic study, and the engineers came up with the best plan that we could put into place relatively quickly and relatively inexpensively. Now, we could go into a project where we start adding all sorts of turning lanes and everything else and start checking up millions of dollars. That was not the goal here. So this is the best effort, the first best effort at getting this right. It's going to improve things dramatically. Whether it will be perfect, we won't know until we actually get everybody moved in and we can see what happens. If it doesn't work and we think there's still a problem, then we'll take another look at it.
Well, just remember, this is just going back to the Fairmont days, that what's working with Fairmont, that we had to buy a new fire truck because we weren't landlocked back there. But when they built that development back there on Fairmont that they're working on right now, they had to buy a new fire truck because it wouldn't make the turn.
I don't believe that's correct. No.
Yes, it is. We were here at the roads were not wide enough to get the existing fire trucks in.
Well,
They had to
in
spend
any event, you're
1
getting way off point.
No, what I'm saying
Ma'am,
is.
you're getting way off point. We're not here to relitigate that development. That is not the point tonight. The point tonight is to talk about Mountain Road and Old Jonestown Road. That's the point. So if we could please confine ourselves to that particular discussion. That development's long been approved and is underway. We're not going to re-discuss it.
Then let's not have history repeat itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there, we have a motion, it's been seconded.
Mr. Chairman, I'll call for the question.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay. Mr. Hines, you have approval for your resolution. We also need to take action on Resolution 1921, authorizing the disposition of specified records in compliance with the Pennsylvania Municipal Records Manual. Mr. Godshall, what are we destroying this time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Good at
board.
that.
Yeah, so I've found that this has become a regular course of action for the township of our size, having to dispose of certain, documentation. So consistent with the Pennsylvania Records Manual, the resolution as provided to the board, as well as the Appendix A, outlines the documents which we will be destroying of after the board approves of Resolution 19-21.
This section is simply in compliance with Pennsylvania Municipal Records Manual. Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve Resolution 2019-21, which does in fact authorize the disposition of the specific records in the compliance with Pennsylvania Municipal Records Manual as presented and recommended by Mr. Gutschall.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that takes us to improvement guarantees, et cetera, et cetera. We have
Just two.
two, a new escrow and a letter of credit. Any questions about the improvement guarantees?
Mr. Gutschall, I assume there's nothing different. These are rather straightforward, at least from my observation.
Yes, Mr. Crispin, yep.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve the two improvement guarantees, the two new ones, one for 6628 Painted Sky Drive and the new letter of credit for Shadebrook Phase 3 as presented and recommended by Mr. Gutschall.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with that, any additional comments from the board or manager? Seeing none, is there, we'll have our next board meeting will be our business meeting next Tuesday, July 16th at 7 p.m. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
H. I've got to get. Oh, Polly's back here. She didn't even. They didn't even speak tonight. What happened? You just.